Our next veteran is Corporal Carl J. Schmidt, United States Marine Corps. 28 June 1943, 28 December 1945. Carl J. Schmidt, the Marine that wouldn't die. Carl attended Marine Intelligence School after basic Marine training, which prepared him for a mission that was vital to the defeat of the Japanese on the island of Guam. Corporal Schmidt was inserted by submarine, along with a Japanese interpreter on the island of Guam in March of 1944. Corporal Schmidt spent the next 3 months conducting the most detailed reconnaissance mission I have ever learned of. He reconned the beaches, the rivers, the hilltops, the ridge lines. He reconned around the villages, towns, updating maps and drawing his own to show potential landing areas for Marines. Carl showed locations of natural land obstacles and problem areas. He drew Japanese fighting positions on artillery pieces, fortified bunkers, pillboxes, along with the numbers of Japanese soldiers in these areas. Carl and his interpreter would run missions for between 5 and 10 days and then be resupplied by submarine or designated cache sites. For 3 arduous months, these 2 men mapped the island, avoiding detection. Once all the intelligence was gathered, Corporal Schmidt was extracted and sent to debrief Major General Charles D. Barrett. Carl was a human intelligence gathering resource who reported directly to the division commander. There, Carl produced stacks of drawings and maps and reports of enemy sightings, the strength and the position of enemy troops. For around 3 weeks, Carl was an intricate part of the mission planning for the invasion of Guam. After more than 2 months of planning, prepping, training, and rehearsing, it was time. And on July 21st, 1944, Carl was with the first wave of Marines to hit the beaches of Guam. Carl helped to advance troops forward as he had seen some of this training before, and by nightfall, the 3rd Division Marines had advanced nearly 2,000 yards inward from shore. The Japanese counter-attacked all night, Carl said. The first one came around midnight, and again at 2 a.m., and the last at 6 a.m. Carl said that when it was light enough and well enough to see, there were at least 100 dead lying in front of us. 3 days later, the 3rd Division had only gained another 2,000 meters of dirt. Fierce, close combat fighting with heavy mortar and artillery attacks were constant as the Marines scratched and clawed their way forward. The Marine 3rd Division and the Army 77th Division finally broke through and joined forces on the 31st of July after 10 days in battle. Now the U.S. forces have effectively cut the island in half and started a push towards Mount Barragata. On day 14 of the battle, the U.S. forces reached the base of the mountain, still only gaining 2,000 yards a day. The Marines on the left flank and the 77th on the right fought past Mount Barragata. This mountain was heavily fortified, and the ridgelines running towards Mount Santa Rosa offered the Japanese the advantage. On August 4th, Corporal Schmidt and 9 other Marines were advancing on the enemy when mortar rounds started raining down on him. The first explosion knocked him down. He pulled his arms and legs in tight and covered his ears. The next explosion is the last thing he remembers. When he woke up, he saw his rifle stuck in the sand and his helmet on top. Marines quickly got him evacuated to an LST and then transferred him to a hospital ship offshore. When Carl awoke the second time, he was in a wire basket being pulleyed across from one ship to the other on cables. Carl said he remembered looking down and seeing the water. The third time Carl awoke, the chaplain was standing over him, saying his final rites. And the chaplain said, "Carl, you're one lucky man. You are the next to be buried at sea." The other 9 Marines with Carl in that mortar attack all died from their injuries. Carl spent the next 6 months in the hospital healing. And at a medal ceremony, Carl was presented with a Purple Heart by a Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel that was the chief of surgery that helped save his life. After his recovery, Carl was sent back to his unit in Guam. Upon arrival there was a lot of activity, and Carl was notified that the 3rd Division would be leaving 12 hours from now for some island called Iwo Jima. Carl said, "Crap, I was just released from the hospital yesterday." The next day, the 19th, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th Marine Divisions, along with amphibious assault groups, made their way to Iwo Jima. The 4th and 5th Marine Divisions landed on the beach below Mount Suribachi, followed by the 3rd Division. The 5th went towards Mount Suribachi, and the 4th up the middle, and the 3rd towards the airfield number 2. There were heavy, intense fighting with only 100 yards advanced the first day. Unlike Guam, which had vegetation growing on it, Iwo Jima had nothing but volcanic sand. There was not a tree on the whole island. Fighting was either crawl, fire, run, and dive in a hole and start digging to get your head underground. One report said every hole that I went by had a dead Marine in it. 5 days into the fight, Marines placed a flag on top of Mount Suribachi, but the fight was just beginning. Carl's 3rd Division had only managed to make 1,600 yards, 1 mile in 5 days. They were fighting right up the middle of the island where most of the enemy was concentrated. The whole island is 2 miles wide by 4 miles long. That's about the size of Canton, with 23,000 Japanese soldiers dug in to well-fortified fighting positions. The enemy had covering fire and supportive fire that interlocked to form a lead curtain of defense. Not only that, they had estimated 40 miles of underground tunnels to move troops and supplies. If undetected, after U.S. forces had passed by, the enemy would come up from behind them and attack. One day, Carl had pulled back off the front lines and was in a semi-secure area where a Japanese prisoner was being interrogated. Carl overheard the Japanese prisoners say that they were to kill 10 Americans each. Carl then asked the general, "How many were we supposed to kill in retaliation?" The general said, "It's open season." Back in the fight, and still only advancing hundreds of yards a day, the fighting becomes more intense. Constant artillery, mortars, and assaults by Japanese troops. 8 days into the battle, Marines have made it past the number 2 airfield, and they are discovering tunnels. Once Carl started down a tunnel entrance, and then thought better of it, and lucky for him, because there were 2,000 Japanese in that tunnel system hiding. The next day, Carl again comes face to face with the enemy, in close quarters, with shots being fired. But Carl was calm, and his shots were truer. Upon searching the KIA, Carl finds on one of the Japanese a leather booklet. Carl thinks it's probably just a diary, but it turns out to be the field reports of the number 2 intelligence officer that belonged to a Japanese major. 2 more days of continuous combat just east of the number 2 airfield. Corporal Schmidt and 5 Marines are engaged with the enemy. After advancing forward, they come across some dead and wounded Marines. Carl and his buddies grab one of the Marines and drag him back to the bomb crater, where they take cover. Still engaged with the enemy and ammo running low, Carl's buddy takes off to retrieve some .30 caliber ammunition. But when he gets back, he is shot and dies instantly. The Marines continue to fight until almost all are dead but Carl. Under the cover of darkness, Carl grabs the wounded Marine and gets him out of there. The Marine was Pat Caruso. Pat became the superintendent of schools in New Jersey. This man also wrote a book about Iwo Jima titled The Nightmare on Iwo. In the book, Pat describes being saved by a Marine that night. That Marine was Carl. Though they never met after the war, they did speak on the phone on several occasions. No rest for the weary. The battle keeps going. One night, after 3 assaults to take Hill 362, the Marines had the high ground and the Japs were down below. Offshore, destroyers fire illumination rounds around the clock to keep the area lit up like daylight. One of the Japanese soldiers down below the hill hollers out, "Marines eat sea rations." And this hillbilly friend of Carl's so affectionately, that's what they called him, so affectionately called, he hollered back, "Tojo eats poo," but he didn't say poo. Carl said he busted out with laughter and he couldn't stop. He said at that moment, with the stress being so high, so tired, so fatigued, and had fought for so many days straight, to hear him say that, he said it was I don't know why I responded that way. I could not stop laughing. He said it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. The humor was short-lived because 2 days later, Carl was shot in the shoulder. He was evacuated down to Airfield 1, and there along the runway they had tents set up over the top of sandbag bunkers. Carl was there receiving care when the mortar attack started. One landed just outside of the tent, and shrapnel was ripping through the canvas, and then another explosion. Carl said, "I went berserk. The corpsman jumped on me to hold me down. He said he may have even knocked me out. I don't remember." He said, "I still don't remember leaving Iwo to this day. And yet here he sits with us, the Marine who wouldn't die."